First contact gone wrong. The sleek crystalline vessel of the Zephyrian Empire drifted through the cosmic void like a predator stalking its prey. The exploration ship Eternal Wisdom had been mapping this remote sector for 3 cycles, cataloging primitive civilizations for future conquest. The Zephyrians, with their translucent bodies that shimmered with internal bioluminescence, had built their empire on the foundation of technological superiority and the subjugation of lesser species. High Commander Zeth floated at the center of the command sphere, his elongated form pulsing with colors that indicated deep concentration. His species had evolved beyond the need for verbal communication, instead using complex patterns of light to convey meaning. Around him, his crew of 12 specialists monitored their stations, their bodies glowing in synchronized patterns as they shared data through their collective consciousness. A sudden disruption in their sensor field caused Navigator Kira to flash an urgent amber sequence. Zeth turned his attention to her station, his own luminescence shifting to match her wavelength for optimal communication. The exchange of information took milliseconds, but what Kira shared made Zeth's internal light flicker with surprise. An unknown vessel had appeared at the edge of their scanning range. Not appeared in the sense of arriving through hyperspace or quantum tunneling, but rather as if it had been there all along, hidden from their supposedly infallible sensors. The ship was unlike anything in their extensive databases of conquered civilizations. Science Officer Even began detailed analysis, his body cycling through rapid color changes as he processed the incoming data. The vessel was roughly cylindrical, approximately 400 meters in length, constructed from what appeared to be crude metal alloys. Its surface was scarred and pitted, showing signs of extensive combat damage that had been roughly repaired rather than properly restored. Massive thruster arrays dominated the rear section, suggesting a reliance on chemical propulsion that the Zephyrians had abandoned millennia ago. What truly caught their attention were the weapons. The ship bristled with them: projectile launchers, missile tubes, what appeared to be directed energy weapons, all mounted externally without any attempt at aesthetic integration. It looked less like a spacecraft and more like a floating fortress that had been brutally hammered into functionality. Zeth's colors shifted to a pattern of curiosity mixed with disdain. Another primitive species attempting space travel with technology barely beyond combustion engines. The Zephyrian Empire had encountered hundreds of such civilizations, and all had either submitted to their rule or been eliminated. This would be no different. Communications specialist Zara initiated standard first contact protocols, broadcasting mathematical sequences and peaceful greetings in thousands of languages. The response came quickly, but not in any form they expected. Instead of mathematics or language, the unknown ship transmitted a simple video file. The image showed a bipedal creature, roughly 2 meters tall, covered in fabric that appeared to be some form of uniform. Its face was disturbing to the Zephyrians: a flat surface with 2 forward-facing eyes, a protruding nose, and a horizontal opening that moved as it produced sound waves. The creature's skin showed no luminescence, no ability to communicate through light. How primitive. The creature spoke in a language the Zephyrians' translation matrix quickly decoded. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Coalition vessel Perseverance. We are on a peaceful exploration mission. Please state your intentions." Earth. The Zephyrians had no record of such a world. Seth ordered comprehensive scans of the vessel while maintaining the communication channel. As the data flowed in, several anomalies became apparent. The ship's crew complement was enormous, nearly 1,000 biological signatures packed into a vessel that Zephyrian efficiency would operate with no more than 20. Their life signs showed they were all awake and active, despite being in deep space with no nearby systems. More concerning was their biological data. These humans, as they called themselves, showed stress hormone levels that should have indicated extreme panic, yet their behavior suggested complete calm. Their neural activity was chaotic, lacking the organized patterns that indicated proper evolutionary development, yet somehow they functioned with apparent efficiency. Weapons Officer Krell flashed a warning pattern. The human ship was adjusting its position, bringing its forward weapons to bear on the Eternal Wisdom. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but definitely deliberate. These creatures were preparing for combat while maintaining peaceful communication. How duplicitous Zeth made his decision. The Zephyrian Empire did not negotiate with primitives. They would demonstrate their superiority and offer the humans the choice that all lesser species received: submission or annihilation. He commanded the Eternal Wisdom to display its power, activating their quantum shields and charging their antimatter cannons. The space around their ship shimmered as reality itself bent to their technology. The human commander appeared on screen again, and something in her expression had changed. The curves of her mouth had altered, and what their database suggested was a smile, though the context seemed wrong. Her voice remained steady as she spoke. "I see. Commander Chen to all stations. Implement Protocol 7. I repeat, Protocol 7. What happened next shattered every preconception the Zephyrians held about primitive species. The human ship didn't power up its weapons or raise shields. Instead, every single human crew member began moving with perfect synchronization, not through technological linking or telepathy, but through what appeared to be pure training and instinct. The ship's crude computers were suddenly overwhelmed with activity as hundreds of humans began manual operations that Zephyrian automation would handle seamlessly. But there was something terrifying in the efficiency of their movements, the way they anticipated each other's needs without communication, the way they seemed to merge with their primitive machinery. Then the scans revealed something that made Zeth's bioluminescence flicker in alarm. The humans weren't wearing protective suits. They were operating in minimal atmosphere, at temperatures that should have been debilitating, with radiation levels that should have required heavy shielding. Yet they moved as if these conditions were normal, comfortable even. Deeper scans into their biological structure revealed the true horror. These humans were not products of peaceful evolution. Every aspect of their physiology spoke of a species forged in constant warfare. Their skeletal structure was designed to absorb tremendous impacts. Their muscle fibers could operate in both aerobic and anaerobic conditions, allowing them to function even when deprived of oxygen. Their neural system was redundant to an almost absurd degree, capable of rerouting around damage that would kill any Zephyrian instantly. Most disturbing of all was their psychological profile. As the Eternal Wisdom's threat display continued, the human stress indicators didn't increase. They decreased. Their heart rate slowed, their breathing became more regular, their neural activity focused into patterns that the Zephyrians' computers could only classify as predatory anticipation. Science Officer Even transmitted urgent data to Zeth. The human ship's power signature was increasing, but not from their engines or weapons. The humans themselves were generating it, their collective bioelectric field actually interfacing with their crude machinery. They were literally willing their ship to perform beyond its mechanical limitations. The human commander spoke again, her voice carrying what their translator suggested was amusement. "You know, we have a saying on Earth. The difference between a weapon and a tool is the intent of the user. This ship, the Perseverance, was built as an exploration vessel. But here's the thing about humans. We've never really seen the difference. Suddenly, every piece of equipment on the human ship that could potentially be weaponized was active. Mining lasers became cutting beams. Asteroid sample collectors became projectile launchers. Even their communication array was reconfigured into some form of directed energy weapon. The transformation was so rapid, so instinctive, that it defied logical explanation. Seth ordered a deeper scan into the humans' history, pulling data from their ship's computers. What he found sent waves of horror through the collective consciousness of his crew. These humans had evolved on a world that seemed designed to kill them. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, and most of all each other. They had spent their entire evolutionary history in constant conflict. And instead of transcending violence as the Zephyrians had, they had embraced it, refined it, made it into an art form. Their history was a chronicle of warfare so brutal that the Zephyrians' translation matrix had no concepts for some of it. They had weapons that poisoned the ground for generations. They had developed diseases as weapons. They had fought wars over ideologies so abstract that they couldn't even be properly translated. And through it all, they had not only survived, but thrived. The terror of human adaptability, the revelation of humanity's nature spread through the Eternal Wisdom's collective consciousness like a virus of fear. Every Zephyrian on board experienced the shared horror as their deepest scans penetrated the human vessel's databases, revealing a species that defied every natural law of civilized evolution. High Commander Zeth struggled to maintain his composed luminescence as data streams flooded his consciousness. The humans had included their entire history in their ship's computers, unencrypted and openly available. It was either supreme confidence or supreme foolishness, and Zeth was beginning to suspect the former. The records showed that humans had achieved spaceflight not through peaceful scientific advancement, but as a direct result of trying to develop better ways to destroy each other. Their first ventures beyond their atmosphere were weapons, missiles designed to rain nuclear fire on their enemies from orbit. The fact that they had survived their own nuclear age was statistically impossible, yet here they were. Navigator Chira pulsed in distress as she analyzed the human ship's navigation logs. The Perseverance had been traveling for 3 Earth years, far from any support or resupply. The crew should have gone insane from isolation, should have turned on each other in the confined space. Instead, the logs showed them maintaining perfect discipline through a combination of rigid routine and controlled chaos they called recreational activities. These activities were perhaps the most disturbing discovery of all. The humans engaged in simulated combat for entertainment. They played games that mimicked warfare, hunting, and survival scenarios. They told stories about monsters and dangers that didn't exist, frightening themselves deliberately to maintain what they called edge. They exercised by lifting heavy objects repeatedly, running nowhere on machines, fighting each other with rules to prevent permanent damage. They were keeping themselves in constant readiness for violence even in the peaceful void of space. Science Officer Even's bioluminescence flickered erratically as he made another horrifying discovery. The humans had something they called adrenaline, a chemical their bodies produced in response to danger that actually made them stronger, faster, and more resistant to pain. But that wasn't the terrifying part. The terrifying part was that they could trigger this response voluntarily, through thought alone. They could choose to become more dangerous. The collective consciousness of the Zephyrian crew reeled as more information poured in. Humans bonded with anything and everything around them. They had formed emotional attachments to their machinery, naming individual components, talking to them, treating them as if they were alive. The ship's artificial intelligence, a crude system by Zephyrian standards, was regarded by the crew not as a tool, but as a member of their family. They called it Perseus and spoke to it with affection. This pack bonding extended to each other in ways that defied logic. The scan showed humans who were genetically diverse, from different regions of their planet, with different ideologies and beliefs, yet they would die for each other without hesitation. They had a concept they called brotherhood that transcended biological relations. They would risk their lives to retrieve the dead bodies of their comrades, not for any logical reason, but because leaving someone behind was psychologically intolerable to them. Weapons Officer Krell transmitted an urgent alert. The human ship wasn't just modifying its equipment, it was improving it in real time. The crew was taking apart and rebuilding systems while they were running, making adjustments based on their scans of Zephyrian technology. They couldn't replicate the advanced systems, but they were adapting their primitive tools to counter them. It was like watching a creature evolve and fast forward. The human commander appeared on the screen again. Sarah Chen's expression had changed. The smile was gone, replaced by something their database identified as determination. Her voice was calm, almost conversational, but there was something underneath it that made every Zephyrian's bioluminescence dim with instinctive fear. "I want you to understand something," she said. "We didn't come out here looking for a fight. We came looking for friends, for knowledge, for beauty. But we prepared for a fight because that's what humans do. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. And right now you're making us think about the worst." She paused, and in that pause the Zephyrian sensors detected something impossible. Every human on the ship had synchronized their breathing. 1,000 individuals had become a single organism, without any technological assistance, united by nothing more than shared purpose. "You're probably scanning our history right now," Chen continued, "seeing all the horrible things we've done to each other. Let me tell you something you won't find in those databases. Every war we fought taught us how to fight better. Every plague we survived made us stronger. Every disaster we faced made us more adaptable. We are the products of a world that tried to kill us every single day, and we not only survived, we conquered it." The scanner data confirmed her words in terrifying detail. Humans had redundant everything. Redundant organs, redundant neural pathways, even redundant psychological systems. They could lose significant portions of their bodies and continue functioning. They could survive injuries that would kill any other known species. They healed from wounds by creating scar tissue that was actually stronger than the original flesh. But perhaps most terrifying was their social redundancy. If their leader fell, another would immediately take their place without hesitation or confusion. Every human on that ship could potentially command, navigate, maintain, or operate any system. They cross-trained obsessively, as if expecting catastrophic losses at any moment. They were a crew of 1,000 specialists who were also 1,000 generalists. Communications specialist Zara made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the collective. The humans had been broadcasting since they left their home system, sending messages out into the void. Not messages of conquest or territorial claims, but messages of greeting, of music, of art, of hope. They had revealed the location of their home world, a suicidal act by any strategic measure. When she analyzed why, the answer was more terrifying than any weapon. They weren't afraid. A species that had survived everything their world could throw at them, that had survived each other, simply wasn't afraid of what the universe might bring. They faced the unknown with curiosity rather than fear, viewing potential threats as problems to be solved rather than dangers to be avoided. High Commander Zeth made a command decision that would haunt him for the rest of his existence. He ordered the Eternal Wisdom to stand down from their threat display. The humans responded immediately, their weapons systems powering down but remaining ready. They hadn't trusted the de-escalation. They were prepared for betrayal. "Thank you," Commander Chen said, and her smile returned. "Now, would you like to try this again? I'm Sarah Chen, and despite what you've learned about us, we really would prefer to be friends. We're very good at war, but we're even better at peace. We've had to be. It's the only reason we survived ourselves." As the Zephyrian ship began to withdraw, Zeth contemplated what they had discovered. They had encountered a species that thrived on conflict, that grew stronger from adversity, that bonded with anything they could perceive as us, and would destroy anything they perceived as a threat to their pack. They were individually fragile but collectively indestructible, primitive in technology, but advanced in ways the Zephyrians couldn't properly comprehend. The Empire had protocols for dealing with hostile species, for handling primitive civilizations, for managing peaceful contact. But they had no protocol for this, a species that was simultaneously all three and none of them. Humans weren't conquerors or philosophers or builders. They were survivors, and that made them the most dangerous species the Zephyrians had ever encountered. As the Eternal Wisdom retreated to safe distance, Zeth composed his report to the Empire. His recommendation was unprecedented in Zephyrian history: avoid human space at all costs. Not because they were enemies, but because the Zephyrians weren't prepared for what humans represented, a species that had made peace with war, that had befriended death, that had looked into the abyss of their own nature and decided to explore the stars anyway. The last data packet from the encounter showed the human ship resuming its original course, continuing its exploration mission as if nothing had happened. But one detail stood out in the scan. The crew wasn't celebrating their victory or analyzing the encounter. They were disappointed. They had hoped to make friends, and they considered the encounter a failure. That, perhaps, was the most terrifying thing of all. The humans measured success not by survival or dominance, but by connection. They were a species of warriors who wanted to be diplomats, of killers who wanted to be friends, of monsters who chose to be angels. And that choice, that constant decision to be better than their nature demanded, made them unpredictable in ways that no amount of scanning could reveal. The Zephyrian Empire would mark this sector of space as forbidden, not because of danger but because of potential. For if humans ever decided to expand beyond their borders, if they ever unified their terrifying potential with true purpose, no force in the galaxy could stop them, not because of their weapons or their ships, but because they would make you want to join them. They would make you part of their pack. And once you were pack, you would die for them just as readily as they would die for you. That was the true terror of humanity. Not their capacity for violence, but their capacity for loyalty that transcended logic, reason, and even survival itself. Retry.